All right, what's going on? It's Mike. Welcome. I'm doing a little bit of a live stream today. Hope everybody's doing great. This is episode number 142 of The Currency. We're doing The Currency live here on YouTube. We'll post it up to all the other platforms later, the audio. But glad to have you guys along. Hope everybody's doing well today. I'm going to just check a couple things. If you're in the comments, do me a favor and let me know. Let me know if you can hear me all right, if the audio's good, etc. Just getting a couple things set up here, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing like a little bit of, what is today? Tuesday morning live stream. We're going to talk today about Wendy's and their surge pricing. They're going to be testing some surge pricing. We'll get to that in just a few minutes, give people a chance to find us and get online with us. But yeah, hope everybody's doing great. If you're watching right now, if you're listening or watching, please let me know how the audio sounds. I'm assuming that it sounds good. That doesn't necessarily mean that it does sound good. It just means that that's what I'm assuming. Welcome, Bob Knowles. Bob says, good morning. Looks and sounds good. Thank you very much, Bob. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining me this morning. And, well, we got Nat from Client Town. All good. Thank you, Nat. Good to see you, man. Yeah, so today's going to be pretty cool. We're going to talk about Wendy's and their surge pricing. I don't know if anybody's aware, but we'll get to it in a few minutes. But Wendy's announced they're going to be doing surge pricing, or I think they call it demand pricing, something like that. It's essentially the same as what you get with Uber, etc. They raise the pricing based on the demand at the given time. We're going to unpack that in a little bit. I just want to give people a few more minutes to show up here, but thanks for joining me, guys. Yeah, so what's been going on this week? I'll tell you actually what's been going on this month. So what does it say? Today's February 27th. My wife and I decided to try out it's kind of a crazy diet, but if anybody ever done the carnivore diet before, we decided at the beginning of February that we'd do carnivore together. I had been curious about it for 2-3 years. You see all these guys on YouTube talking about it. I was like, yeah, I'd kind of like to try it out. I like meat. I like steak a lot. I like beef. So the idea of just eating straight, bacon and ribeyes for a while seemed fine. Like, didn't bother me, at least in theory. But I never pursued it. I was never like, we got to do this. I just thought, oh, it looks kind of interesting. I ought to try it out sometime. So anyway, my wife is like, I've been trying to figure out some health issues, been working on my diet, and I had we have a family friend in South Africa, Dr. Frank. He's just a wonderful person. We've known him. I've known him since I was in my 20s. My wife has known him since childhood. Just a great guy. I used to work for his father when we lived in South Africa. Also a medical doctor. Phenomenal people. And anyway, Frank is an MD, and he's been experimenting with this, and he did it for 30 days. And he said, you ought to try it. It really helps reduce inflammation, et cetera, et cetera. And we said, okay, give it a whirl. So my wife was like, I want to do this. And I thought, this is one of those things that if you do it by yourself, goodness, I mean, can you imagine cooking? It's like you got to cook a normal meal for your spouse, your children, whatever, and then you're trying to not eat any of that stuff like spaghetti or whatever, rice, and now you're also trying to eat carnivore. So I said to her, you know what, hon, I'll try it with you. I've been curious about it. I'd like to give it a whirl. So for the last month, we're coming up on I've got a few days left, and we're done with this thing. We said we'd do it for a month, and we started at the beginning of February. Here we are, February 27th, and we're almost done. So I'm looking forward to being done, but I got to tell you, it's been phenomenal. And I've lost some weight, surprisingly, and feel really great. I mean, I feel really good. I'm just bored. Like, I'm really bored and tired of eating carnivore. So that's just a little side note, but I've been doing that for the last month. So friends that have been like, hey, do you want to grab lunch or you want to get breakfast? And I've been like, oh, I'm a little busy right now. I can't. Some of that is me just avoiding, because it's like, what do you do? I'm going to go out and just get like, can I have 2 burger patties, please? Or give me, 24 chicken wings. It's kind of weird. So I'm looking forward to being a social animal again, getting out with people, eating normal food. Funny enough, no cravings. I'm not like desperate. I'm just looking forward to it. So anyway, hope your week is going well. It's Tuesday as we record this. And as I've been saying before, I'm experimenting a little bit with live streaming. I've been doing things called office hours from time to time. So that's where I will just fire up the camera, hold office hours, kind of like the professors used to do. I'm sure they still do in college, which is essentially you can just pop by their office if there are things you want to talk about. I'm no professor, but I thought it'd be kind of cool to do that. So that's been going well. I did one last week, but there was an issue with the internet. Like, internet kept cutting in and out. I eventually just after 30 minutes gave up. I took the dog for a walk not long after, and there's the Xfinity Comcast guy up on the pole working with the internet on the wire. So I don't know what was going on, but clearly was not working. But it's been really good doing the office hours. When I do an office hour, because it's impromptu, I just kind of fire it up. I don't necessarily have a topic. You can talk, we can chat, it's nice. And then I'm not keeping those. So if you go to the channel looking for that, I'm not saving those and uploading them to YouTube. Now this, however, if I'm doing a more proper live stream today, it's going to be an episode of The Currency, the podcast. I know it's like confusing, but I've got some of these legacy efforts and I'm trying to bring them all together. Today will be a discussion on Wendy's, which we're going to get to just now. That'll go live. It's live now. That'll then be published after it went live to YouTube. So you'll be able to watch this afterwards. And I will take the audio and publish this audio to normal podcast platforms. So you'll be able to get this on Apple and Spotify and so on. So that's that. All right, guys, thanks for joining me. Hope everybody's doing great. If you got a minute, say hey in the chat. Let's jump into today's topic. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to talk about it informal. If you have a question or a comment, just pipe up and we'll kind of just do things as we go. So I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to the news regarding Wendy's. But yesterday, I think it was yesterday, they made the announcement that, hold on a second. We got to say hello to Lidosh. Hello, Lidosh. Thanks for joining me, man. Hope things are going well in Russia. So Wendy's, which as most of you, probably all of you know, is a fast food chain here in the United States. And I think they've got some restaurants in other countries. But Wendy's announced that come 2025, they are going to be testing surge pricing. And for those that don't know or aren't aware, surge pricing is this thing that tries to base pricing on demand and availability. It's like, in some ways, the ultimate expression of the free market. It's supply and demand. Now, I'm not promoting surge pricing, to be fair. So don't assume anything from my comments. I'm just explaining it. And where you see surge pricing is with, so where you see, I was getting a text message from somebody that's also in the stream letting me know that there was some technical issues on their end. Where you see surge pricing would be like Uber or Lyft. And I don't know if you guys remember years ago, I think, was it an earthquake in New Zealand? I think maybe in Christchurch or I don't know. There was an earthquake. No, it wasn't an earthquake. There was a mass shooting. Forgive me. Now I'm going to get banned by YouTube for talking about this. But there was a terrible event, violent event. People were scrambling to try to get out of the area. And so then all of a sudden in this city, this town, there was a huge demand for Uber. People were jumping on their phones trying to get an Uber or a Lyft. I forget which one it was. I think it was Uber. And of course, the pricing reacted because they have a model where they base pricing based on demand. And so if there's a surge, all of a sudden the pricing goes up, and it goes up dramatically. And there was outrage afterwards because this situation, a lot of people could not escape like they wanted to, like they needed to, they felt they needed to. And so, because when everybody kind of surged onto Uber to get a ride, pricing became astronomical, people couldn't afford it, they were terrified, they wanted to escape, but they felt like they couldn't afford to escape. It's just crazy. You will own nothing and be happy. Isn't that what the World Economic Forum says? You will own nothing and be happy. So anyway, this surge pricing model has become popular, especially with kind of fractional services, rideshare services being one of them. Another example would be ticket sales. You want to go see a sporting event or a concert. That would be an instance where surge pricing comes into play. And people, as there's kind of a crush to buy tickets for an event, the pricing's higher. As the demand slows down and the supply is available, if there's still seats available, that pricing becomes more reasonable. So Wendy's has announced that they want to start experimenting with this. They're not saying that they're going to implement this across the board unilaterally, but they want to start experimenting with this. Now, this comes with an interesting kind of situation. They have a brand new CEO. The guy's name is Kirk Tanner. I looked him up. Kirk, funny enough, 31 years plus at Pepsi. And his role at Pepsi, various roles, but he got to a point where he was the CEO of PepsiCo Beverages North America. So, I mean, he's a hitter. Kirk has really risen the ranks, 3 decades plus at all right, so people are telling me they're getting tech issues. And now Dave Danglis, tech issues here, I think. Now it's working. Here's the thing that's weird. I have a little bit of a lag on my end as I'm looking at myself in the screen. Like there's a 3 or 4 second lag. I'm not certain what's going on there. I could try to get into YouTube and change a setting. I might have a setting screwed up, but I'm just going to roll with it for now. I apologize. Let me know if there are issues. We can always restart the stream if that's the case, but hopefully that's not the case. I think the internet providers here in Charleston are, I don't want to say they stink, but I'm going to say that they're subpar. You've got essentially 2 internet providers. You got WOW, W-O-W. I don't know who owns WOW. When we stayed at an Airbnb, when we first moved down here for a couple months, the person that owned the Airbnb had a WOW. It was terrible, terrible. So when we moved into our house, I said, I'm not going to get that service. We signed up with Comcast, which has Xfinity. And I got to be honest, I've never liked Comcast. Comcast is terrible. And here we are with laggy internet. So I'm going to keep rolling with this, but let me know. If it becomes really bad, I'll just restart the stream and we'll go from there. Okay, so where was I? So Kirk Tanner, pretty big hitter with, and Bob's telling me it's good there. Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it. The feedback helps. I'm kind of running blind here a little bit. But Kirk Tanner, hitter at Pepsi, decades and decades of experience, executive leadership, etc. He just joined Wendy's as the CEO. Just joined, I want to say, sometime in early January or mid-January. I mean, he's brand spanking new. And so they're kind of coming out swinging. His CMO is Carl Laredo. Carl has been, I think, at Wendy's for about 8 years. He spent some time in the kind of furniture cabinetry world, I want to say, maybe furniture world. And he was doing some work in, maybe Procter & Gamble, can't remember. But so both these guys, they know what they're doing in this industry. But long and short of it, they're saying that we want to do this thing. Now, they're saying that they want to do this surge pricing. And that's why I titled this episode Surge Burger. I thought that was very clever. Thank you. So they're kind of coupling this surge pricing rollout. And I want to tell you what I think about in a moment. With a $55 million investment. No, I'm sorry. Let me back up. A $20 million. They've got a $55 million investment in pushing breakfast over the next few years. That's ad campaign money dedicated. They've dedicated $55 million over the next few years to push breakfast. They're trying to get you to come eat there all the time, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They've dedicated $20 million to upgrading their in-store signage. And what that is specifically, they want to go to digital signs. So when you come to the front of the restaurant, you're going to place your order, you look up and you see the signage, and there's the Dave Burger and the Frosty and the different things that they sell, that'll be digital. And the reason that that's important is that allows them to update data, pricing specifically, real time. They're saying that they want to use kind of a mix of algorithms and some AI influenced thinking in here. They want to incorporate things like weather patterns. So for instance, and this isn't just surge pricing, let's say it's a rainy day and they know that certain products sell well on a rainy day in your locale. It's not going to be rainy across the country. And so what they're going to do is they're going to have this kind of AI algorithmic influenced system that will then push or promote certain products and pricing, change the pricing based on all these conditions. So you walk in on a rainy day, let's say they're chili. I rarely eat at Wendy's. I used to like eating at Wendy's, quite frankly. Back in my 20s, there was a Wendy's near the place I worked. I have a little story about that. Hopefully I'll remember. But let's say it's their chili. Great food on a cold, rainy day. Well, you might walk in and that might be really featured on that digital display real time, and the pricing might be bumped a little bit. So that's kind of where they're going. So they're making a $20 million investment over 2024 so that by 2025 and into 2025, by the end of 2025, they can start experimenting with this surge pricing. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. There's a few things I don't like about this. Let's hold on one second here. Dave says, your feed's been fine so far. For some reason, I was unable to chat, but now he can. Yeah, it's weird. I've got a little bit of a lag on my end, but it is what it is. Thank you. Thanks for letting me know, guys. I appreciate it. So the one thing I don't like about the surge pricing, I say it like, but I'm a free market guy in many ways, but people often make the mistake of going, well, you're into business and strategy. You're a consultant. You've owned businesses. You're a marketing guy. You're a capitalist. You love capitalism. It's not necessarily true. I'm a human being first, and I believe in structuring economies and societies in a way that allow for the most human thriving. Human flourishing. I want to be healthy and whole as a human being. I don't just want to make money, and I don't just need convenience to be healthy. I don't just need pleasure. There's so many other aspects to being human that are important to our flourishing. So that's a whole thing. The thing about the surge pricing is that it maximizes every nickel, every penny that the brand can get from the consumer. When Adam Smith, the kind of father of free markets, if you will, of capitalism, came out with this concept of the invisible hand, that the market always itself adjusts, that there's supply and demand and all these inputs from the market go to the consumer, go to the producer, and then the prices kind of self-adjust so that if you need to buy a saddle for your horse, there's enough information in the market that you and the person selling the saddle have an idea of what it's worth. And if that person is selling the saddle for too much, you'll go find somebody that's selling it for less, and so on and so forth. And if you're offering too little for the saddle, the saddle seller, the saddle manufacturer, if you will, can say, no thanks. I know there are people out there willing to pay twice what you're willing to pay, and I'm happy to wait another hour or two for someone to come along and buy the saddle at a fair market value. So this kind of surge pricing is really just based on this idea of fair market value, but it takes it to a whole nother level. And this is the mechanization and the digitization and the informatization. That's I'm not even coining words because I can't even say the words I'm coining of the society and the economy. The more information, the more real-time information that they can gather from the market, the quicker, and the digital aspect of this allows them to quickly make changes to pricing, the quicker they can respond. So essentially, this is Adam Smith's free market concept coming to full fruition. The tough thing about this is it makes sure that the brand, that the company selling something can get every nickel it can out of your pocket. It impoverishes you. I mean, there's an opportunity for consumers to take advantage of market inefficiencies. If the market doesn't know that that Frosty is actually worth $2.12, not $1.99, then I can save 13 cents. Look at that. Look at me doing math on the fly here. And that's good for me as a consumer because that gives me more purchasing power. I'm allowed to retain some of the wealth that I've created and earned. Maybe use that towards my future, maybe use that to another purchase, maybe save it so that I've got a little bit of peace of mind. The more efficient that the market gets, the harder it is for the consumer. Now, there's another factor driving all this, and that is in previous iterations of our society, and I don't mean ancient, but in just previous iterations, go back 50 years, go back whatever, we had other aspects that protect us. What I mean by that is we had mediating institutions. I'm part of a family, an extended family. I'm part of an ethnic group. I'm part of a city, a country. I'm part of a church. I'm part of an educational group. I graduated from Yale. I'm a Yale man. I'm not a Yale man. But, we look out for each other. And, you have all these kind of institutions that mediate, that provide cover and context so that you can live your life. Those are being stripped away by design, by the way. I don't mean that there's some cabal in a back room with cigars laughing all the way, although that does happen. But by design, by intellectual, historic, if you look back, by design, those mediating institutions are being eroded. And what you get from that is, instead of groups, you get individuals. And that's fine. On one hand, we get a lot of freedom. We go, hey, as an individual, I have freedom. I can make decisions. My father, was a Wainwright. I don't have to be a Wainwright. I can be a programmer or whatever. So there's a level of freedom that comes with this degradation of these institutions and the power of these institutions. But at the same time, and this is where you start to see this in the surge pricing, in the leverage of technology kind of against us to get every nickel out of our pocket that they can. At the same time, when you are just an individual, you have no power. You're not, you and I on our own, not together, but you and I as individuals do not have enough power to stand up to bigger corporations, to stand up to the state, to stand up to these forces that have the power to leverage this technology. Now, some people say, well, see, Mike, that's why capitalism is bad. Well, you can say the same thing for socialism and communism. It's just in different arenas. So maybe there's no surge pricing on your Frosty and your cup of chili, but they can use that same technology to ensnare and encapture and strip power from you, from the state, et cetera. So this isn't like capitalism bad, some other system good. This is the culmination of the leverage of technology outside of the context of humanity. Okay, that's kind of an obtuse comment. So I have concerns. All that to say, I have concerns. I do not see this as the logical conclusion of free markets, although it is, technically you could say that. But I don't think this situation betrays the fundamental flaw and thus, socialism is better. I don't buy that. I think all these systems can be abused. Human sexuality can be abused. The family can be abused. Free markets can be abused. State power can be abused. All these things can be abused through the more and more powerful our technology has become. Sorry, I'm looking up here because I have the door open. My wife is out shopping right now, and I thought I heard the dog come in, but obviously I didn't. So let's go back to Wendy's. That's a little bit of like my philosophizing about this, but let's go back to Wendy's. So I guess the question is, will this work? Is this going to work? Will this surge pricing work for Wendy's? When I first thought about it, I thought, no, it's not going to work, and I'll share why. I'm not so sure that I was right initially. But I didn't think it was going to work for a few reasons. First of all, when you look at something like Uber, the reason that surge pricing works for Uber is that when you as a consumer need a ride, you just watch the Phillies baseball game and you need a ride to the train station. Now, forgive me, I would assume if you watched I would assume the train goes to the Phillies. Let's say you need a ride to the airport. All right, you flew in from Denver. You're going to watch the Phillies game. All right, game's over. Now you need a ride to the airport. You Uber. You know, you're with a bunch of people, so you can see a crowd, but you really don't know how many people are trying to buy an Uber right now. You don't have any idea how many Ubers there are throughout the region. You don't know what the going rate typically is for Uber in that area around that time, etc. So you are going in as a consumer blind. This gets back at some of this free market fully realized. I mean, it's very lopsided. I mean, it's fully realized for those selling. It's not fully realized for those buying. But in those circumstances, you really don't have a lot of information. You're kind of in a situation where you don't see, you don't know. You just need an Uber. You really don't know the people around you, how many of them want an Uber. You can assume, I bet a bunch of people do, but in the end, you don't know. And so you're going into this blind. You don't know what pricing should be. You don't know how many Ubers are out there, etc. When you look at Wendy's, and there are a number of reasons here. When you look at Wendy's, well, I know, first of all, at lunchtime, at noon, it's going to be busier. So right away, if they're doing surge pricing, I can just 2 plus 2. I know it's going to be more expensive. Right there, boom. So what am I going to do? If I'm not an idiot, I'm just going to say, you know what? I'm not that desperate for Wendy's cooking, for Dave's cooking. I'm happy to go find another place. And the other thing about it is, so I know at noon, it's going to be busy. I can also see with my eyes, look at that drive-through. There are cars all around. The parking lot is full. More information. I know pricing is going to be higher. The other thing too is when I'm going for Uber after the Phillies game to get to the airport, I essentially have 2 options. I mean, I can do rideshare. Let's call Uber and Lyft the same because they're both using surge pricing. And I can call a cab. I mean, I know there are other options, but essentially if I want to get there and I don't want to muck about, I've got 2 options, maybe 3. Maybe there's like a shuttle bus, but I don't really have choice. When I look at a Wendy's, go to any corner where there's a Wendy's or any commercial strip where there's a Wendy's, what's around it? I mean, I've got McDonald's, I've got KFC, I've got Chipotle, I mean, I've got Chick-fil-A. I mean, I got so many options. And then there might be a smattering of local eateries. I mean, so when I know, if I look, it's noon, I look, Wendy's is stacked, I know I'm going to pay a premium for that burger. Am I really in love with Wendy's food that much that I need to have their food? That I need to have that cooking? Am I willing to pay the premium when I've got so many options and I can already know before I even get in, it's going to be expensive. When you go to get your Uber to get to the airport, you don't know. You don't know what's going to cost. I remember one time flying in last year to Rochester, New York. I had to be somewhere the next morning. I had a late flight out of Charleston, had to do connectors, etc. I got into Rochester at 12:30 in the morning. The Uber was outrageous. I had a 5-minute drive to where I had a car parked in a parking lot, essentially in an office park. There was a client I was working for. The loaner car was parked overnight in this lot. I just needed and it was probably less than 5 miles. It was like a $65 ride. Well, it's like, where am I going? How am I going to, I got no option, so I had to pay it. But when you go for lunch, you don't have to go to Wendy's. You got so many options and you can just see with your eyes, do a little bit of math in your head and know that you're going to be paying a premium. So for me, I thought, well, that's not going to work. And I guess the last thing is urgency. I mean, what kind of urgency? When I was in that circumstance from the airport, I had no choice. Like I had to get to my car. It was 12:30 in the morning, pitch black, cold. I got no options. I'm not going to walk with luggage for 3-4 miles. And a lot of those were highway miles. Like, what am I going to do? So I had no choice. Lunchtime, I don't have to go out to eat even. I mean, I could prep ahead of time. I could go somewhere else. I could just say, you know what? Let me wait until about 12:45 when the lunch crowds died and go grab myself a burger. So there's no urgency. I'm not stuck. People usually have a lot of flexibility around that. So my initial thought on this was like, it's not going to work. These guys are wrong. It's not going to work. But here's what occurred to me. We are a convenience society. We've more and more convenience society. When I talk to my youngest, my daughter, she's going to be 25 soon. Like my generation, I don't know where you fall, Gen X, if you're boomer, millennial, etc. There's a whole group of us that are older that are used to hopping in the car and going to get something. And my daughter does. She goes and gets something. But there's a millennial, there's a strata of the millennial, not all of them, there's a strata of the millennial generation. You get into the Zs, etc., the alphas. They don't think twice about picking up their phone and just Uber Eats, placing an order for something to be delivered. I remember when pizza delivery became a thing. It was kind of huge. And this would have been like the early 80s, maybe late 70s, early 80s for me, but like that a pizza shop down the street would actually deliver the pizza to your house. It was like, wow, how exciting. And it felt opulent, like it felt wrong. I was brought up very working class. We didn't have a ton of money. We went through some financial crises, both, economically in the country, but just personally, my family had some tough times financially when I was growing up. And the idea that somebody would deliver a pizza to you felt almost immoral to me. My parents never said it that way. But like when the ice cream truck came down the street and I was like, oh, hey, he's ringing his bell. And I'm like, hey, can I get an ice cream? The answer was always no. We have ice cream, there's ice cream in the fridge, in the freezer. And even then I wasn't allowed to just have it whenever I wanted. So yeah, I was severely abused, severely abused as a child. So Litash says you can go by foot to a bus station. Well, it depends. You're living in Russia. I'm not sure what city, but the city I was in, often the airports are outside of cities, at least in America. And I think that's it's pretty smart. They don't want big jets coming and going from city center. And often these outlying areas don't necessarily have bus stations. So this one didn't have a bus station. I'm sure I could have got a bus right there at the airport. And I know if you're watching a major league baseball or football game in America, there's always a bus. Don't get hung up. I'm just trying to explain the dynamics here of dynamic pricing or surge pricing. But I didn't grow up with this idea that you just did that kind of stuff. It seemed like a waste of money. You didn't waste money. And so when pizza delivery kind of became a thing, it was like, wow, that was a big deal. And it seemed opulent. It wasn't something we did. Well, after a while, it starts to catch on. But I remember even as a family, we get a sheet pizza. There were 6 of us, 4 kids and 2 parents. You get a sheet pizza later on. This would have been mid-80s, early mid-80s. Is a sheet pizza, for those that don't know, it's like a rectangular, it's a really big pizza, and you cut it in squares. It's great for feeding a lot of people. They're usually not the highest quality sheet pizza, but it's decent. So you're going to have a little party, maybe a bunch of friends over, you get a couple sheet pizzas, basketball team after the game, sheet pizza. So that's what we would do. Anyway, my parents, even then, would go pick up the pizza. It was very rare to have it delivered. Over time, delivery becomes ubiquitous. Everybody's doing it. Okay, great. Domino's in America really made that popular in the 80s. They had their kind of it's delivered in 30 minutes or it's free, and under 30 minutes or it's free. But delivery was not necessarily just widely accepted. Initially, it became. Even so, there are only certain types of foods that you would associate, in my generation, with delivery. Pizza, Chinese food, you get Chinese food delivered. I'm trying to think of what else back in the day. Those might be the only two that come to mind right now. I'll probably think of something later. But now, food delivery is just, it's ubiquitous. Like Uber Eats and some of these other companies that will deliver food for you, all the companies, they had their own delivery. The pizza shops, they had their own delivery guys. Pizza Hut, Domino's, your local pizza delivery, place that would deliver. They don't even have their own delivery people anymore. Everything is Uber Eats. What is the other one? Does anybody remember the other? There's a second big delivery company. I can't remember it for some reason. If you remember, please throw it in the chat. But everybody gets delivery now. You just order food and then you get delivered. And so all this to say, when you're out of your house and you're thinking, I'm going to pop into Wendy's, it's lunchtime, you have data. You can see the lines, you can see the traffic, you can know the time of day, and you just say to yourself, it's probably going to be a premium. They're doing this surge pricing. I'll skip it. I'll go somewhere else that's not, that I think is not. However, DoorDash, Dave Danglis for the win. Thank you, David. DoorDash, that's the one that I think pretty big. DoorDash and Uber Eats. Thank you. Nowadays, though, a lot of people are ordering food online. Isabel says Glovo. Glovo. Isabel, where do you live? Are you in America or are you somewhere else? I'd be curious to know what Glovo is. I'm not familiar with it, but would like to learn more. And let's see, do we have another? Nope, that's it. Okay, so sorry guys, I'm rambling a little bit. I apologize. Long and short of it, everybody uses DoorDash. They use Uber Eats and this Glovo. I'm not sure what Glovo is, but it could be a typo for all I know. But people order out. It's normal. And so when you do that, you don't have the same level of information that you do when you're out and about on the street. You're essentially going on a phone. You're going on your smartphone. You're just placing your order. You're texting to order often. So, by the way, Isabel says she's European. Fantastic. I wondered. It's not something I've heard of here in the U.S. Doesn't mean we don't have it, but I'm just not aware of it. But I would assume it's very similar to DoorDash and Uber Eats. Thank you. But you don't have that info. So I think this has the potential to work for that reason, because a lot of people have transitioned away from going to an establishment, especially for fast food or just to, like, I need a quick meal, to just using Uber Eats, Glovo, DoorDash. The other thing too, I think, is we have become so convenience oriented that I think today's consumer, as opposed to yesterday's consumer, who I would be, I guess, is going to be fine with paying the premium. It's become so normal to have companies, marketers, and brands use our information to conveniently help us, essentially to use it against us. That's become so normal that I think you're going to see more people just accept it. So I hear Wendy saying we're going to go use this surge pricing, we're going to experiment with it, and I think, well, that's not going to fly, and here's why. The consumer's too smart and blah, 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 blah. Step back and think about it. I can tell you what I will do, but I am not representative of the market at all that Wendy's or any of these other firms are selling to. So there's a third reason. So the first reason being, I think that people will not have access to information because they won't be out in the streets. They're going to be in their house ordering online. They're not going to see the lines. They're not going to see the full parking lot. So that's data that they're not receiving that might make them want to do something else. And they're not sitting there going, well, I could just go across the street to McDonald's. So they're just going to order because they're ignorant. I don't mean that pejoratively, just they're ignorant of the situation, of the data. Number two is convenience. We all have just become inured to convenience, and we're used to paying more. You think of subscription models for software now. It's like, it's like $50 a month for software. You may have paid $200 once and owned the software for life. Now you're paying $50 a month for something, or $10 a month. For year after year after year, you're paying thousands of dollars for something that used to only cost you $300. And we just get used to it. We just kind of accept it as that's the way it is. So there's this element of convenience that we've become inured to. And I had a third reason, and I've gone blank. What was my third reason? Yeah, I don't know. It'll come to me just now as I'm thinking. Let's see. We got a comment here. Lidosh says, online orders exist for a long time. They absolutely do. They absolutely do. And I want to be clear. I'm not decrying. I'm not attacking these things like, oh, society's terrible because we're ordering online. I've been ordering from Amazon for as long as I can remember now. I mean, I was an early adopter of Amazon, loved it, and unabashedly so, and I still use them. So I'm not anti. I'm just saying that some of the inputs that we used to get as consumers are gone as our behaviors change. So the first reason I was saying was information. The second reason is we have become used to convenience. I don't know what the third one was. It was going to be so, guys, it was literally going to change your life. I feel terrible. I've let the audience down. We almost reached celestial nirvana together. Sadly, I failed you as a host. I don't think it was that big of a deal. It'll come to me some other time. But yeah. So what are your experiences? Are you, do you think that, I know the third reason. Guys, I know the third reason. The third reason is I don't think that Wendy's will be by itself in this. McDonald's is already doing it kind of on the sly. They're not making an announcement like Wendy's is. But you're going to see that these fast food restaurants and fast, convenient, fresh, all these different monikers for fast food, they're doing this. They're doing it on one level or another. It's just going to become more common. And so when it's noon and today I go, well, Wendy's, they're going to be jacking their prices up. I'll go to these guys. Well, these guys are going to be jacking their prices up. So what's going to happen is that playing field is going to become equalized. Everyone will be doing this. And what ends up happening is your option to say, well, I'm going to go to somebody that doesn't do it, it goes away. Now, it doesn't totally go away. You can go down the street to a diner, privately owned diner. You can go down the street to local restaurant. You can go to a deli and get a sub sandwich and a soda and a brownie. I mean, there are other options. Hey, guess you could pack your own lunch. How about that? Crazy thought. But the point being that there will be options, but as all these fast food brands and corporations embrace this approach, it's going to be hard to avoid. If Wendy's was doing it by itself, and if most people went into the store to order, and if people really were hostile about their nickels and dimes being taken, then this would flop. And that's kind of where my mind went initially. But as I thought it through, I realized that's not going to be the case. People are happy to pay more. We all do it for convenience. We're often not in the restaurants. And at the end of the day, I think all the competition, kind of direct competition to Wendy's will adopt this, which means you can't escape it. If you're in for fast food, you're going to pay a premium at lunchtime, at dinner, and at breakfast. Now, the upside is you could say, hey, I keep an eye out. I tend to grab a snack or something, and I do it when no one's shopping. I go at 2 o'clock and I get my Frosty, let's say, or I get my, little McNuggets or whatever. So, I mean, I think some consumers will be able to take advantage of this. But yeah, what are your thoughts? Have you guys been aware of this? What do you think about it? Also, I'd love to know how many folks here use delivery services. I rarely do. My daughter says she does all the time, which I believe. And I know things change. I mean, I just like I said, my family didn't use pizza delivery. When my wife and I had our place, we get a pizza. I love getting delivery. It's a pain, especially in January, to have to put your boots on and battle the slush and snow to get your pizza and bring it back to the house. Why not put an order in and then carry on with your life until the doorbell rings? Now, the one thing I don't like, and this is just me being elitist, look at me, an elitist snob. I like the delivery. It's filthy. The people doing delivery work, forgive me, I don't want to be judgmental, but they're often grubby. They smell like reefer or cigarette smoke. You see all these videos of people doing things to people's food. It's just like, there's a whole disgusting aspect to this so I don't even like the DoorDash model, et cetera. And quite frankly, the food doesn't always show up hot and fresh. I mean, fast food. So McDonald's is great right off the grill. You sit right down and you eat it. You get McDonald's and take it home, and if those fries got cold, forget it. It's like eating cardboard. But when they're hot and fresh, it's a special thing. Hey, Brad Weinberger, just tuning in. Glad to see you, Brad. Thanks for joining us. We've been talking about Wendy's and their experiment that they're going to be doing in the next coming months, next year, with surge pricing. And if you missed, I won't go through it all, but yeah. So Brad says, surge pricing for food now? Yeah. And some of you may be wondering, Mike, why are you reading these out loud? So obviously those of you on the stream, you can see the comments. I'm putting them up on the screen. There are people that are going to watch afterwards, and also this will be an audio podcast, so I want to make sure the listeners are able to follow along. But yeah, surge pricing for food. Wendy's announced yesterday they're going to be experimenting with it in 2025. They're investing about $20 million to upgrade their digital signage. They're going to be leveraging some algorithms and AI, connecting it to the signage to try to take advantage of circumstances in the environment at a given time to price their food. McDonald's food doesn't decompose. It doesn't, not even in your gut, Brad, not even in your gut. That's great. But yeah, I would love to know if you guys heard about this. What are your thoughts? And also, what do you do with delivery? What I'm going to do here is wrap up. I'm going to stay online. So those of you that are listening for audio, we're going to wrap up right now. But those of you that are online, I'll sit and chat. We can kind of kick back and forth in the comments. But for those of you listening, thanks so much for joining us on The Currency. This is episode number 142. If you haven't done so already, subscribe. If you want to be part of the live streams or catch the video aspect of this, hop on over to Mike Gastin. That's my YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube at Mike Gastin and subscribe there, and you can turn on notifications to get notified when we do these types of streams. But for those of you in audio only land, thanks for joining, and hope to catch you in the next episode. Cheers. So talk to me, guys. What do you think about surge pricing? I opened up, for those of you that joined a little later, I opened up with that situation in New Zealand years ago where there was a violent, there was a mass shooting, and Uber got in trouble because there was surge pricing and people couldn't escape. So do you guys remember that? That was something else. Yeah, so surge pricing, this is price depends by customers. Yeah, so Lidosh, surge pricing is essentially like Uber. When lots of people want an Uber, it raises the price. So when you bring up Uber on your phone and you're like, hey, I need an Uber, and if everybody at the same time wants an Uber, Uber gives you a price that's much higher than if you were to be looking for a ride when hardly anybody's looking for a ride. You get a much cheaper rate. And so there's a surge in demand, a surge in the customers that want the product, and then that causes the price to go up. So that's what surge pricing is. Brad says, I like that they are trying something different, but I hope it flops. Yeah, you and me both, Brad. I think this is the future. I don't mean it in a good way. I'm not excited about it. I think it's terrible. I think it's terrible for us, the consumer. Oh, and earlier I said I had a story. I should tell you, this is just a little side comment. When I was just out of high school, I worked at this warehouse. It was an office supply company. It was eventually acquired by Staples after I left. But I worked in the warehouse. It's actually how I got my start in marketing, because I worked my way up from the warehouse. I was kind of there on and off through college into the marketing department. But what I want to tell you is when I was in that warehouse early days, there was down the street a Wendy's and a McDonald's, and sometimes I'd go to the Wendy's for lunch. But there was this fellow that worked in the warehouse. Now this would have been I graduated high school in 1984, so this was early, mid-'80s. This is before we used terms like autistic or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, autistic was a thing, but you didn't talk about people with Asperger's or people being on the spectrum. No one talked. Autism was kind of like a strange thing. You didn't even talk about geeks and nerds that much. I mean, we use those words, but you didn't really think. It was just more of a disparaging, like, what a nerd that guy is. You just were making fun of somebody. Okay, there was a guy that worked there, and he was older than me by far, by a good 10, 20 years. He was a bachelor, lived by himself, and he was weird. They have big, thick Coke bottle glasses and very unfashionable, very awkward way of speaking, not very good personal skills. Like, he was just very awkward, socially awkward individual before we talked about that kind of stuff. And I don't know if he was part of some program or what, but he worked in this warehouse. I remember being a picker for a while. I'd pick orders, then he'd pack them. Not that the two of us worked together, but as a picker, you'd go through the warehouse, pick everything, deliver it, and then these guys would box. And this guy was just on a packing line, but he'd talk shit all the time. This guy, he was great. He would talk shit all the time. I forget his name. He was just like, bah, 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 bah. He was an expert. He was a know-it-all. We all know people like this now because it's so common, but it was rare back then. And his big thing was he was big into the stock market and he was massive into Wendy's. This guy was gaga for Wendy's stock. And he was just like, every day he'd tell us how much money he was making. He's becoming a millionaire because of Wendy's. And I don't doubt it. I bet that guy made a ton of money, but he seemed like the most unlikely person to be successful in life, just in general, because he was so weird. But I just remember that we would go to Wendy's down the street sometimes for lunch, but this guy was nuts about Wendy's stock. And this is before people talked. I mean, it's not like the stock market didn't exist, but the stock market's become so consumerized. Like all of us have stock accounts. You get online. There was no online. There was no brokerage that you could go to easily. Like you had to work. If you wanted to invest in the stock market, you had to make an effort. And this guy was playing the stock market while he packed boxes for an office supply company. And he was getting rich off of Wendy's. He loved Dave Thomas, and he'd met Dave Thomas. I mean, he was like this crazy celebrity fanboy. He was like, Dave was a celebrity to him, but he was heavily invested in their company. And I bet that guy made a ton of money. I wish I could remember his name. And I think maybe he lived on his own. He may have lived in his mother's basement. I mean, this is like how cliche this guy was. And nice, like he never caused trouble. He just was like a one-track, one-horse, one-topic pony. So that was cool. Let's go to some of these comments here. Dave Dangler says, I hate the idea of surge pricing, but thinking about it, if the surge was only a few cents, see, Dave for the convenience, say 10 cents or less, I think I'd be okay with it. If a good portion stayed local, even better. Oh, Dave, you're so thoughtful. I mean, my sense is who knows? I doubt it'll just be a few cents. I would agree. I mean, a few cents are in the noise, at least for our generation. I know there are generations that they still count the pennies, those that are still alive. Bob Nulls, insightful as always. I'm price sensitive myself and won't pay more to wait in line. You and me both, Bob. Thank you, by the way. That's very kind. I am not interested in it. To be honest, I don't even really like fast food restaurants anymore. I used to eat at fast food restaurants all the time as a young fella. I used to love, getting McDonald's. And my wife and I lived in South Africa. We got married in South Africa before apartheid fell. But right around the time we were getting married, there was a lot of resistance against the F.W. de Klerk and the Nationalist Party. It was the Nationalist Party. After we got married, apartheid fell. Nelson Mandela became president. We moved back to South Africa, not because of that. We weren't some, DEI freedom fighters, just the way things fell. We were a young couple. We moved back to South Africa. But under apartheid, there were sanctions. The whole world sanctioned South Africa. So there was no McDonald's, Burger King, et cetera, in South Africa. There used to be way back in the day, but once sanctions hit, all that stuff went away. We were living in Cape Town at the time, and McDonald's made a big announcement. We're building a McDonald's in Cape Town. And I was like over the moon. And I would have been in my, mid-late 20s. We got married, I was 25. I think we moved back there, I was 27, I think. Going to McDonald's was so special for me. And I, growing up in America, like you just know the menu. So all these McDonald's workers, all the McDonald's, everything systematized, are all trained. They open up. I show up practically maybe on opening day. I can't remember. And I'm like, I'd like a number 3 no onion Diet Coke. And the woman behind the counter was just like, she didn't grow up with it. It was all new to her. McDonald's was a whole new concept to the whole country, essentially that whole generation. And I had to slow down. So I've always been into fast food. Not anymore for many years. It's very rare. If I'm on a business trip and I'm starving and it's like, 9 o'clock at night and I'm driving and I just need to get somewhere, I might do a drive-through just to grab something. But fast food kind of it grosses me out. I might do a Chick-fil-A once in a while or a Chipotle at an airport if I have to. But that's that. Thank you, though. That's a nice comment. Let's see. Toasted Tarantula says, except for ordering pizza, which I have not ordered for delivery in 30 years, I do not order food for delivery. All right. So hold on a second. You've not ordered pizza for delivery in 30 years. So except for ordering pizza, I do not order fast food. Hold on a second. Let me bring that back up. I want to make sure. Oh, you don't. So I'm confused. Except for ordering pizza, which I have not ordered for delivery in 30 years. So 30 years ago, you got pizza delivery. Gotcha. I do not order food for delivery. Yeah. I mean, I don't think we ever get delivery. Kind of funny. This house that we're in, we bought this house. Nice couple that had it before us. Young family, both hardworking professionals from what I can tell. I don't know them very well, but good kids. I'll say kids. They're not kids. They've got children. Young children. But one day, my wife and I are only here for a couple weeks. But this shows you like the digital, how things happen. So we're sitting there, knock on the door. I go to the door and open it, and there's I want to say Papa John's, maybe 1 or 2 boxes of Papa John's pizza on the doorstep. And I'm like, and whoever dropped it off, they're gone. And I'm like, did you order pizza? No, we didn't order pizza. I want a mistake. And I look at the label that the computer prints out. And it was to our house. I won't say our address, but it was right to our address. And I realized, oh, the couple's name that used to live here, they ordered it. And what they had done is they used their app, as young folks are wont to do. No judgment. I've used pizza ordering apps. Boom, boom, boom. Kids are hungry. I think they were busy, because what I did is I texted them, or I may have called and said, hey, pizza for you just got delivered to the house. And they're like, oh, shoot. And they had told me we were working on the house, because they had a new house they were working on. Kids were hungry. We didn't have time, so we just ordered pizza. We forgot to update our app with the new address. And I'm like, well, come and get it. They're like, but they live like 15, 20 minutes away. And they're like, you know what? Keep the pizza. We'll order another one. So Lydia and I had Papa John's pizza this was about 2.5 years ago. Lidosh says, I understood. I hate this option. Ones in Russia was mobilizing an army, and price to airship blow up to 100x time. Yeah, I think this is a model that's going to be everywhere, Lidosh, and it's going to be applied to all kinds of instances. Dave Dangles, that sounds like the guy with the red stapler. You know what, Dave? The funny thing about that, he looked like the guy with the red stapler. The only difference is he was built like him, that kind of stocky, little chunky, same color hair, a little disheveled, and the thick glasses. Only difference is this guy used to wear one of those trucker caps, the mesh in the back, the foam in the front, and a flat brim. Now, let me tell you, that was not popular in the 80s. That was like nerdwear. It was just like redneck nerdwear. Nowadays, guys wear these ironically, even with the flat brim. He had the brim flat, and he just wear this trucker cap. I don't even remember what was on the front of it. He may have had multiple. And I actually think it didn't have anything in the front. You could just get them like from Champion Outlet, whatever. Had the foam in the front, just the white foam with maybe red brim, visor, blue. But he'd wear these trucker caps. This guy was like ahead of his time. I mean, I don't know. I may have been dealing with an angel unaware, just kind of in our midst. Lidosh says, usually you pay $50. If this blows up, you'll pay $5,000. Yeah, 100%. Brad says, is search pricing just capitalism acting fast? Yes. Brad, great insight. And he says, I'm not a pure capitalist, just for your information. You got to watch earlier, not that you need to sit and watch the whole thing. I said exactly the same thing. This is really capitalism kind of coming to its fullest realization, in the sense that all this information is going into the system, and then that information is creating the quote unquote perfect. I don't mean perfect in a in like good or evil, but perfect qualitatively sense, quantitatively perfect. But it's not necessarily good for human beings, and in many instances, the buyer does not have perfect information. So the seller is gaining an unfair advantage in that they're getting all the perfect information, whereas the buyer doesn't. And in Adam Smith's concept of the invisible hand in the market self-adjusting, both buyers and sellers have access to information, there are discrepancies, and people can take advantage of those disparities in data information. But essentially, there's this self-correcting thing happening. In this instance, I think the buyer doesn't have good information. They're blind, especially if they're ordering on an app from home and it's being delivered. And we more and more are becoming creatures of our passions, meaning, there was self-control was a virtue. Denying yourself was a virtue. Delaying gratification was a virtue. Those virtues are, they're not debatable from my perspective, but in our society, those are debatable virtues. People don't necessarily lionize delayed gratification. Why not have sex with somebody now if you can? Why wouldn't you? Like, you're crazy if you don't. If you're attracted to them, why wouldn't you? Of course, future generation or past generations of society have said, whoa, no. This needs to be contextualized within both the marriage relationship and the family, because this is a creative act. It's not just a pleasure act. We're decoupling ourselves from these things. Again, that's a whole nother topic which we could absolutely get into, and I know that you would track and follow. But I agree. I think it is capitalism kind of in its purest manifestation so far, but the downside is it's lopsided, typically in a really good free market, not necessarily capitalist. I think this is perfect capitalism, where capital is able to take advantage of the market. But in free market dynamics, which I think are a little different than capitalism, it's not perfect, because the buyer has no concept. They have no information. They're blind. And so they're not acting in their own best interest, and they don't even know it. Okay, Dave says, I've worried about surge pricing for years. Ever since McDonald's installed their kiosks, seems like good data collectors. Agree 100%. And he continues, it came to mind when I ordered a quarter pounder and noticed how it cost inexplicably more than sandwiches that were larger. And he continues, so the price was popularity driven. Makes sense, but imagine the prices being adjusted in real time. So here we are. And Dave, I'll say, if you look to your point, this has been going on in a way. It's not surge pricing, but if you buy a quarter pounder in one city, it often costs different. It will cost different than if you were buying in a different city. So a quarter pounder in New York City versus a quarter pounder in Rochester versus a quarter pounder in Atlanta versus a quarter pounder in San Bernardino. I mean, the prices are all over the place based on, what that market's willing to pay. It's not so much that, beef is more expensive in New York. There are obviously higher costs in New York City, labor costs, real estate. So I understand they need to get more, but like they're systematized, they're centralized, they're growing and harvesting that beef in some disgustingly massive, miserable feedlot in Oklahoma. A lot of stuff is being made up cheaply all over. So it's not like New York has to grow its own beef and then get a premium for it. There are arguments for charging more, but I'm sure there's more than just them trying to break even on some of their overheads with those price disparities. People in New York are just used to paying more, and McDonald's knows they can get it, so why wouldn't they? So, yeah, man, this is a great conversation. I'm glad you guys joined me for this. Thank you so much. And let me know, you can either email me, just email me at mike@mikegastin.com. You can leave a comment in the comments. Doesn't have to just be the chat. But let me know what you think about this approach, doing these podcasts as a live stream. I did this back in 2020. I don't remember why I stopped, quite frankly, but I did. But I'm really grateful to have you guys along. Thanks so much for sticking with me, for your comments, for being engaging. And hopefully this was interesting. I'm curious to see where this is going to go. It's not going to go to a good place. This is not, in some ways, the era that we live in, it's an amazing time to be a consumer with everything that's available, but it's at the same time a terrible time to be a consumer, because we are more and more becoming defined and defining ourselves as consumers, more and more consumption oriented, and more vulnerable to the technology, the power, and the position of those that sell consumer products and consumer goods. So buyer beware. But interesting to see this happen and to see where it'll go. We'll talk more about it. Guys, I love all of you. Thank you so much for being with me. Hope you have a great rest of the week, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Cheers.